Welcome to the Ad Nauseam podcast, where classical gourmands everywhere can finally get their fill. Join us for a delectable discussion of Greco-Roman civilization stretching from the Minoans and Mycenaeans through the Renaissance and right down to the present. And now, ladies and gentlemen, here are your hosts, Dr. David Noe and Dr. Jeff Winkle.
Welcome, Ad Nauseam listeners, to episode 110. My name is Dr. David C. Noe. I'm here in Vomitorium South, in the basement, in the bunker, the headquarters of Reformation Heritage Books, who has loaned this facility to us to record, with my fabulous friend and all-around great co-host, Dr. Jeffrey T. Winkle. How are you, Jeff?
I'm feeling good today, Dave. We've been away for a bit. You had some
couple weeks.
You did some traveling, and
yes,
and it's been trying to kind of find a time where we can do this. So
yes,
it feels good to be back down in the bunker.
Yeah, I've been burning some midnight oil, some early morning oil. Burned some oil in the afternoon.
Man, are you running out of oil?
There's just a big black cloud hovering over my house as it drifts off into the distance.
Right, you have a pretty substantial translation project that you are.
Yes, I do.
You are nearing completion. Yes?
I am, thankfully, yes. And that deadline is looming over me.
Yeah.
So I've had to put in a lot of time on that. And that has cut down a little bit on our time for other things like podcasting. Mm-hmm. But you've been busy too,
I have been
right?
busy, yeah. Now a new semester starting, and my kids seem to be involved in everything.
Mm-hmm.
Robotics and basketball and meetings
right.
and music teams.
Plus you got to eat, you got to sleep.
You got to do all those stuff too.
Yeah.
So it's been really busy.
Right.
But I'm glad we've carved out this time.
We got it.
Are you ready for this episode?
I think so.
Okay.
I think I'm as ready as I'll ever be.
Okay.
Which is an odd thing for people to say. How could they know that? As ready as you'll ever be.
It is
right?
kind of an odd phrase.
I think so.
I don't like it.
There's no more additional readiness you could add with just a little more time.
This is the apex.
This is it.
This is the top. Yeah.
The fastigium.
Yeah.
Throw in some Latin there. What are we talking about?
We are diving into book 9 of the Aeneid today. So
how many books does this epic have, by the way? Are we nearing the end?
Well, it's got 12.
Okay.
So that means we're probably maybe 53 episodes away from getting through this. Yeah.
Now, Ovid, he's got 15 in his Metamorphoses,
mm-hmm.
right? And they say maybe that was inspired by Aeneas, the archaic poet.
Right.
His Annales apparently had 15 books.
Yeah.
But I'm guessing maybe he just got to 12 and he thought, that's where Vergil stopped. I can do 3 more.
I think he was just trying to one-up Vergil.
Oh, absolutely.
All right.
And just cranked out 3 more. So we're in book 9.
We are in book 9, right?
And what's that going to be about?
Well, it's starting to get battly.
Okay.
Right. So this is the Iliadic half.
Right.
That we're in, and so things start to heat up between the Trojans and the Rutulians and the allies on either side, and it's about to boil over into a full-scale war.
Okay.
But we have some episodes in book 9 which are kind of sad and tragic and bloody. This episode featuring Nisus and Euryalus is a centerpiece here.
Yeah, so just like in book 4, we had the terrible tragedy of Dido as she went to her doom in a memorable episode entitled "Come On Baby, Light My Pyre."
Oh, nice.
With a nod to the Doors.
That's right.
You say nice, but you thought it up.
That's right. Well, I'm just kind of patting myself on the back.
Yeah, a little self-congratulations.
Right.
Inspired by Euripides and Sophocles and Aeschylus, the 3 greats there, we see Vergil channeling his tragic emotions, right, showing his chops. And now we have kind of a mini tragedy, don't we?
We do. And I think it has this interesting layer that it's clearly modeled, at least at some point, on book 10 of the Iliad, the so-called Dolon.
Oh, yes.
Which is an episode which many now believe to be a later interpolation.
Really?
Yes, that it doesn't fit. It doesn't belong.
Interpolation?
Yes. So
Is that like a kung fu move or something?
It's a inserting something in later.
All right.
Right. And so I think you could read this episode as Vergil in some ways kind of redeeming, not redeeming, but maybe almost correcting that episode.
Interesting.
In the Iliad. But
so you think he's deliberately to get ahead of ourselves? We can catch up with ourselves later, maybe.
Yes.
As I see myself recede into the distance. You're saying that maybe Vergil is deliberately thinking about the Dolon episode and saying, I can do that and I'll do it a little better in this respect.
Yes, it better or make it fit more, right? We could talk about the details of this, but Vergil adds like a part B to the Dolon in a way that Homer never really approaches. And so I think he completes the scene, not maybe tries to improve upon it, but he completes the scene.
Interesting.
All right, we'll see where it goes. Yep.
So we got a shout out.
Yeah, we do.
Yeah.
Who is this?
This is a lovely young woman, Carrie Benetter Swartzwelder.
Okay.
So when I knew her, she was simply Carrie Benetter. Mm-hmm. She was my student in Virginia, in the place where I taught there, and she's since been married, and now she's Carrie Swartzwelder, and she shares this shout out with us. It's quite long. It's quite interesting.
Yeah.
And we're going to have to be a little bit selective here, so why don't you start it out?
Well, first I got to say, she's got a great name.
Yeah?
It's like, it comes off the tongue, staccato.
Yeah, you're right.
Carrie Benetter Swartzwelder.
Boom, boom, boom.
Exactly. It
right.
almost sounds... it sounds almost Harry Potterian.
Really?
Yeah. It's
okay.
It's a great name. All right. Let me start us off here.
right.
So it says, I enjoyed taking Latin back in the day, though I would not have chosen to take it if it had been optional. Okay.
So I like that because Latin should not be optional. It should be obligatory.
Exactly. Mandatory.
Everywhere.
Right. And listening to the podcast feels like auditing a more openly humorous version of your class. That you're being
referring to me.
You. Yes.
I don't like where this is going. A more openly humorous version? Okay.
Don't take it personally.
All right.
Gone are the deadpan jokes, followed by the awkward silence of students unsure if laughter was appropriate, replaced with actual laughter, puns, and dare I say, dad jokes.
So what's this with the dad jokes? Help me understand this.
Well, I guess a lot of people. I know you're a big fan of puns. Right?
Yes, I am.
Right. And
Paranomasia.
Good puns can be very clever.
Yes.
But I think
thank you.
for a lot of people, puns are considered a low form of humor.
But those people are wrong.
I know. It's an art form.
It is.
And so it's often been kind of derided. Oh, it's a dad joke.
Yeah, but what's wrong with that? The word dad, that's good. And the word joke is good. You put them together, dad joke. What's there not to like?
Well, I think it comes around to this idea of kind of the archetype, which I'm not a fan of. Like dad as buffoon.
Oh, yeah.
Dad is kind of...
You're thinking of Michael Gross on Family Ties?
I'm thinking of that.
The original buffoon?
Or every commercial that features a father.
Right.
It's just some kind of couch moistening moron who can't figure out, how to use a socket wrench.
Walks into the kitchen and, puts the dirty dishes in the refrigerator.
Right. So I see like the dad joke. You're right.
I see.
What's wrong with dad? I think it's dad as buffoon.
I see.
It's kind of hopelessly out of touch, and it's any kind of joke that elicits a groan instead of an actual laugh. Okay, that's it's.
I find sometimes people, and I mean especially myself, are too stingy in their laughter. Right? If it's a pun, just humor it a little bit.
Yeah.
Just laugh, let it go.
I would say that you are stingy in your laughter.
That's what I just said. I am stingy in my laughter, me especially.
Okay, I got you. But you think people are too stingy?
Yes.
Okay.
It all depends on how the joke's delivered. I don't want someone telling me I have to laugh.
Okay, I got you. Right.
I don't like to be told that. But if you deliver it with a little bit of self-effacement, then I'm all over it. And that's funny, no matter how lame it may seem to others.
Right. Now, do you remember these episodes that she refers to back in class, where you would drop these jokes and students being unsure of?
Yes.
I mean, I've had before a class kind of gets to know who you are.
Yeah.
And if you make a joke, they kind of come with the assumption, this is a class, this is a professor, this is going to be serious.
This is serious. Right. Well, and I usually wear a tie to class.
Yeah.
I demand a lot out of the students in terms of attention and so forth.
Sure.
But that's so much more fun than when you say something funny, because you could tell, they're laughing, they're chortling a little bit, but they don't know what to do.
So you find that discomfort very entertaining.
It's great. I had one today, if I may. We'll get a little bit off subject here. Yeah. We were reading some Greek at the seminary where I teach, and we came across the story of Tantalus, and it was about Niobe. Let's see, it was Amphion married Niobe, the daughter of Tantalus, and we were talking about Tantalus's crime. Fed his son Pelops to the gods, and everybody was onto it and didn't take a bite out of Pelops except for Demeter, because she was a little dense, right?
Yes.
And took a big chunk out of his shoulder.
Right. And then he had to have an ivory prosthetic.
Exactly.
Right?
That's where I went. And he had an ivory prosthetic. And I just commented it was difficult for him to get through TSA or customs. They would say, do you have anything to declare? And he would say, I have this pre-man ivory shoulder. Is that okay? And most of the class didn't laugh because they didn't know if I was being serious. But there were some, chuckles and smiles into the notebook.
Had you not showed this side of yourself to this class before?
Only a little bit.
Okay.
You got to dribble it out a little bit at a time.
Right.
Because if you, try to be, you try to make them laugh all the time, they won't learn anything.
Yeah.
So
I gotcha.
It's a delicate balancing act. But back to Carrie.
Carrie continues. By the way, when my teaching When teaching my classical conversations class last year, I nonchalantly slipped in the fact that Alexander the Great shares his middle name with Smokey the Bear.
Yeah, that's a mom joke now. She's turned it into a mom joke.
I love it, though.
Okay.
I love it. Only one of the kids caught on, but he explained the joke to the rest, who all promptly laughed along, whether they understood or not. You were credited, of course. So she's saying, that's your kind of humor.
Yes,
right?
so the royalty check's in the mail, right?
Yes. I told them I was passing on what I had learned from a much-beloved Latin professor.
Oh, that's really kind.
Want to pick it up from there?
Yes, I will. Right. If I can stop my blushing. She says, before having children, I was a firefighter in Loudoun County, which is in Northern Virginia. This is interesting, isn't it?
She's a firefighter.
Yeah.
Wow.
Yeah. And thus the Smokey the Bear, right?
Yep.
And I designed the shirts for my fire school class. Each class does their own. It included a Latin phrase because who doesn't love a Latin phrase to add a little gravitas to your hoodie?
Exactly.
But ching. I say facetiously. I listened to the episode on state mottos where you guys totally mocked people who do that. Did we do that?
Well, I think we mock people who do it poorly.
Yes.
Right, that's all it was.
No, and Carrie didn't do it poorly.
No.
The motto was nectemere nectemide, which means not rashly nor with fear. Mm-hmm. That's a good one.
Very good.
She says, I didn't make it up. Don't remember where I came across it. It seemed fitting for a firefighter to be neither reckless nor fearful.
That's perfect.
It's great.
Nothing to mock there.
Yeah, I'd buy a hoodie with that on it. Mm-hmm. Yeah, you want to go along with the rest there?
Yeah, let's finish this. With regard to my current location, my family and I finally left Virginia this past September and moved to the beach. Nice.
Yes.
We are living just north of Wilmington, North Carolina. That's a lovely part of the country.
You been there?
I have.
Okay.
I love it. It's a fantastic place to live.
Right. If I can just cut in here.
Yeah.
I'm sorry. So just to finish up, because I want to skip over this part here. But she says that today was a balmy 70 degrees and sunny. And she says, as for the shout out, sure. Who doesn't love to be publicly mocked by a former professor?
Oh, did we mock her?
I don't think so.
I don't think so. Yeah,
no.
She's assuming too much.
Well, I think she's just a little bit cautious because she knows what a big meanie you are, Winkle.
I know exactly.
You are so cruel.
I think
on this
I think I
podcast.
went fairly easy on
You
Carrie.
went light on her, right? I'm the cuddly one.
Right. Oh man.
Thanks.
Thanks, Carrie. Really appreciate you listening. And I'm very envious of the 70-degree weather right now, as it's freezing up here.
Yeah, it really is. Yeah. So, Jeff, we're going to get into this now.
Let's do it. So, how about I jump to the opening quote?
I'd love that.
All right.
Yep.
So this comes from an article by one Peter G. Lennox, from an article entitled "Vergil's Night Episode Reexamined," Aeneid 9, and then the relevant line numbers. And this is an article which is trying to pick apart, analyze this tragedy of Nisus and Euryalus.
So this is from the journal Hermes, 1977.
Yes. So the section that I'm about to read, he's just walked through a number of other scholars' interpretations of this episode.
Okay.
And now he's coming around to what he's going to argue. So he says, I shall argue in what follows that such conceptions of the undertaking and of Nisus' part in it are not supported by a careful consideration of the text. So he's responding to these previous takes.
Okay.
Nisus and Euryalus are taking their turn at watch upon the wall of the Trojan camp. After 8 verses in which the poet introduces these two characters who have already appeared as contestants in the foot race in Aeneid 5, which we talked about,
yes,
Nisus suddenly speaks, beginning with a final question to which his train of thought has led. He says, of course, in Latin, Dine hunc adora mentibus adunt, Euryali an sua quique dios fit dira cupido.
Right.
So he's kind of musing about where do these thoughts, where do these desires come from?
Do the gods give our minds this kind of burning, O Euryalus, right?
Yes. Is it desire itself become a god to us?
Yes,
right?
to each person.
Yes.
Right? So if you really like something, right, say you really like a chicken sandwich.
Yeah.
You know, the age-old, is it Popeyes or is it Chick-fil-A that makes the better chicken sandwich?
Where do you fall on that?
At Chick-fil-A at this point.
Okay.
Primarily because I think the odds of a sponsorship are a little bit higher than with Popeyes.
Okay.
But Popeyes makes a mean sandwich too.
Sure.
So the sua cupido, right, each person's desire and it's a dira cupido, right? It's a dangerous desire.
There you go.
Like if you eat 5 sandwiches, that's going to be pretty dira, right?
Right.
Becomes to him a god. Is that how it works?
Yes. And so Lennox continues to say, so to some commentators and critics, this is the key question to an issue which was prominent in the poet's thoughts throughout this episode, and indeed throughout the poem as a whole. Is man able to act as an agent in his own right, free from divine intervention? There is no direct influence upon the events which follow comparable to the divine assistance rendered by Athena to Diomedes and Odysseus in the Doloneia, which is the Iliad model for this scene, right? And so it is concluded that Nisa's dira copido, his dangerous desire, does in fact become to him a deus.
Okay.
So this is Vergil kind of rearranging or kind of considering the theological world, where in the Iliad it's Athena, she represents the god, she pushes Odysseus and Diomedes along
on their night raid. This is in the Iliad.
Yep.
And as they're on their way into Troy, right, where they carry out devastation, is it on their way in or on their way back where they encounter Dolon?
I think it's on their way back.
On their way back, they encounter this hapless Trojan named Dolon. And they kill him. Right?
Yeah.
And it's an act of quite sudden brutality.
Yes, right. And that's one of the reasons that many later scholars and readers thought it doesn't quite square with the Odysseus and the Diomedes we see elsewhere. And so they're acting in some ways very unheroic if we measure kind of heroism against what Athena represents.
I don't know. We don't probably have time to get into it too far, but
you don't like it though.
Well, Diomedes is certainly heroic and has a different kind of a character. He's one of the most admirable in the whole epic. But I wouldn't put this past Odysseus at all.
Yeah.
This seems very much like him in some ways. Remember how he treated Thersites?
Yes.
In book 2?
Right. Doesn't kill him, he just beats him on the head though.
Beats him, I know, but mocks and ridicules him. There's a savagery about what Odysseus does there.
Right.
Also, the way he treats Ajax after the war, right, in the contest over Achilles' armor.
Right.
There's a cruelty in Odysseus's behavior that I don't think is ever eclipsed.
No, I think you're right there. And then of course, also the tradition that Odysseus throws the infant Astyanax off the walls of
That's
Troy,
correct.
Right? So and I think that behavior of Odysseus certainly squares with the Odysseus, like even the Odysseus we see in the Philoctetes, right? Using people for his own ends.
That's the Sophocles play.
Right? But I think so. Most people read this, of course, the Odysseus that we see in the Odyssey,
right?
Which has its own problems, but much less.
He's domesticated.
Exactly. That's the perfect way to put it. Right. So. So we'll consider this.
Okay.
So how is Vergil responding to this episode, and what is the kind of the theological world that is he standing behind it? Where are the gods?
Right. Yeah. So what do you take away here from Lennox then on the question of do the gods create this burning in our minds, or does one's own desire become a god to each? What is Lennox's takeaway?
Well, Lennox goes on to say. Something along the lines that Diomedes and Odysseus, they survive, right? They kill Dolon and they return to the Greek camp.
Right.
And so they don't pay for their crimes to any degree. Nisus and Euryalus, spoiler alert, they don't make it.
No.
Right? And so Vergil adds this addendum is that they do these similar kind of horrible, brutal kinds of things. And whatever god led them to do it, they are punished for it.
Interesting.
Yep.
The way I've always read the Nisus Euryalus story, and I could be wrong about this, I'm willing to be corrected, I know that's rare, in the course of this episode, is that it's not the killing of the Rutulians that is the crime, because it's an enemy situation. It's a battlefield of sorts. It's the fact that they go too far, right? They don't have moderation even in their warfare.
Right.
They get overwhelmed by a kind of bloodlust.
Yes.
And that's what is their undoing.
Right. No, I would totally agree with that. I would even kind of telescope even further back.
Okay.
So in the Iliad, I mean these kinds of the killing of that Nisus and Euryalus do and that Odysseus and Diomedes do also remind me of what Achilles does on the battlefield, where he's gathering up these young Trojan boys and sacrifices and slaughters them.
Yeah.
And I don't think that Homer wants to see, oh well, that's just what heroic warriors do. I think we're supposed to see a madness in that. That's the rage, the main end of Achilles.
Right.
And so I think in the Iliad, that wonderful scene between Glaucus and Sarpedon, that very almost absurdly weird scene where they introduce each other on the battlefield.
Isn't that Glaucus and Diomedes?
No, it's Glaucus and Diomedes. Sorry, yes,
I'm sorry.
You're right.
I think it's book 6.
Yes, and so they meet on the battlefield, Trojan versus Greek,
right?
And they exchange stories.
It's a picnic,
right? And then so they discover that their ancestors had been guest friends,
correct?
And so they say we can't fight, and so they exchange gifts and they move on. And so I think in that Homer gives us a model of how a hero should approach the battlefield. There's no heroism in killing someone who's below your station. You want to try to tease them out and kind of figure out, okay, what level are you on? and therefore should we fight. So to kill somebody in their sleep is the antithesis.
Yeah.
How could there be any kind of justification for that?
Right. We've talked about this before, just to go pop culture on you a little bit. You know, that's my thing.
Yeah.
Is the Batman movies with their brutality, right?
Yes.
It's never a fair fight anymore, right? It's the hero is so much stronger and more capable that in the vengeance he takes on the lower characters, it seems too uneven to be pleasing.
Right. Yeah, exactly. So there's something inherently queasy about a fight that's not fair.
Right.
Yeah.
So unfair.
Yeah. But we are getting way ahead of ourselves because there's this other scene that precedes this with Turnus, and as they approach the camp, and this weird thing that happens with the boats. We got to cover that.
Okay.
So Dave, would you start us off by reading some Latin?
I would love to.
The very beginning of Book 9.
Yeah. So this is Book 9, lines 1 through 7. Adque diversa penatus dum parta geruntur, irdrem de caelo mi sit Saturnia Juno, auda cad turnum lucotum forta parentis, pilumni Turnus sucrata vallis adebat, adquem sic roseo taumantias ora locutest, Turnac quod optan tidivum promittere nemo, aude erdret vel venda dies and attulit ultro.
Very nicely done.
Thank you. I got tripped up there in line 7 with the Wenda.
Right. You pulled it back together, though.
Woof.
Yeah.
Yeah.
All right. Now, I rarely do I kind of call attention to this because I'm a big fan of Mr. Lombardo.
Yeah.
But his translation of this first line, I thought was I really want to know what you think of it.
Okay, all right.
He translates this first line, "Atque ea de versa penitus dum parta geruntur," as while Aeneas was admiring his shield. So book 8, remember, ends with him getting this new armor.
Yeah.
Right. And how would you do? Just give me a literal translation of that very first line.
Okay.
There.
And while these different things were taking place, in their... I'm struggling here with penitus.
Yeah.
Penitus means completely, deeply.
Yes.
So the idea is, ea diversa, while these different things are taking place in their different spheres, it's deliberately vague.
Yes.
So it's kind of a summary statement, and I'd like to compare it to the things that Homer says at the beginning and the end of various books in both the Iliad and the Odyssey. Mm-hmm. Typically, the book ends with, and all the heroes, went down to sleep as, the night descended on the camp.
Right.
It's a formula.
Yes,
right?
yeah.
And then the next book begins as rosy-fingered Dawn stretched her, her fingers, her hand over the sky.
Yeah.
Then all the heroes woke up, and it's formulaic. So I think this is kind of a bit of a formulaic line as well.
So wouldn't a better translation be something along the... And while this was all going on...
Something like that.
Yeah.
So I think what Lombardo has done is he has imported the meaning from the end of Book 8.
Yeah.
Because that's what he was doing. Aeneas was admiring his shield, but I think it's a little too free.
That was my sense.
It's a little too free.
Okay.
But I have a lot of sympathy for him because it is a difficult line.
Right.
It's so generic.
You can almost make it whatever you want it to be.
Yes, it's incredibly flexible.
So that's what he does.
So I agree with his general principle of interpret the meaning when you're translating. Don't try to represent the words. But I think it's a little too free.
Okay. All right. Good. Okay. Yeah. So I'll translate, Dave, what you recited and a little bit more. So while Aeneas was admiring his shield, or while all this stuff was going on, Juno sent Iris down from heaven to bold Turnus, who was sitting in the sacred grove of his sire, Pilumnus, and Thaumas' daughter with pale rose lips. Turnus, what no god dared promise you, time in its turning has brought unasked. Aeneas has left his town and his fleet to visit Evander's Palatine realm. Not only that, he has gone deep into Etruria to recruit the country folk, all the way to Lydian Cortona. What are you waiting for? Now is the hour to call for your chariot. Quit stalling and take their camp by surprise.
Okay.
So Turnus learns for the first time, as we heard in Book 8, Aeneas has gone up the river to visit Evander.
That's right.
He's in the kind of the area of kind of central Rome, where it will be.
He's getting the backstory on Hercules, and he's meeting Pallas, the son of King Evander. He's forming his alliances.
Yes.
He's out of the picture temporarily.
Yes, exactly right. And so Thaumas' daughter, she's kind of calling to his attention to two things. Is one, he's away from their camp. Like their leader's gone. This is a good time to attack. But two, he's already making local allies.
Yes.
So you better nip this in the bud.
That's correct.
Yeah.
So just to keep all the audience up to speed here, Thaumas' daughter is another name for Iris. And Iris is the rainbow goddess, right, who is the messenger of Juno in the same way that Hermes or Mercury is the messenger of Jupiter.
Right.
So behind this then is Juno. Juno sends Iris. Iris tells Turnus, get up and get going
And get
here.
moving, yes.
Call for your chariot. Right? Summon a lift. You ever use lift?
Lift? Oh no,
It's misspelled. There's a Y in there.
it's like an Uber.
Yeah,
It's
well, I think Lyft says the Uber's like a lift.
Yeah, right. Yes. Yeah. Exactly.
Yeah.
Right. So I think one of the interesting tensions that starts here and that we see throughout is like if we play this game of who's the corollary in the Iliad.
Yeah.
So this is often taken. This is Aeneas' Achillean half, right?
Right.
So this is where he stops being Odysseus and it becomes Achilles. But Turnus' character, I think, is really quite complex.
Yes.
Because at one level, he's playing the Hector character. He's the great warrior of the hometown peoples. He's defending his home from this invader.
Yes.
Right? But he also has these rage like Achilles aspects to him as well. And so I think it's sometimes just saying, well, Turnus is our Hector and Aeneas is our Achilles. That misses a lot of kind of the complexity that's going on.
Right. Well, because Aeneas is also Paris.
Yeah.
He's about to steal someone's
exactly.
not someone's wife, but someone's betrothed.
Betrothed. Yeah.
And Turnus has no wife and child for whom to fight.
Yes.
Unlike Hector.
Right.
So he's not a family man, and so gone is some of the sympathetic aspects that Hector enjoys.
Yeah.
In the Iliad.
Right.
But I agree. There are no simple ways to characterize these heroes.
Yeah.
They're complex.
Right. And in the lines, speaking of kind of where to place sympathies, in the lines that follow this passage, Turnus, he doesn't just kind of call up the troops and head on over there. He makes all the expected prayers and sacrifices. And so that struck me as I was reading this is he's a lot like Aeneas in that way, right?
Yeah.
He's very religiously correct. He gets all those pieces in place before he charges the camp. And so that makes it more difficult. Vergil makes it more difficult for just saying, oh, he's the villain.
Right.
He's a lot like the man he's trying to chase out.
Finally, a sympathetic villain, right?
Yeah, there you go. Right.
So the plan works. Juno dispatches Iris, who goes down to meet Turnus, urge him into battle,
Yes.
bring him up to speed. And as we said, Turnus is religiously correct, right? He's got the same level of piety as Aeneas. He's he's not a cartoon character.
Right.
And what steps does Turnus take next?
Okay, so then finally gets all the ritual out of the way.
Okay.
He leads his army up to the Trojan fort, but he's kind of surprised that they're all holed up in there. They're not coming out ready to fight. And we learned that Aeneas has ordered his men to do exactly that. Wait till he gets back.
Stand down.
Right. So at this point in the story, so Aeneas is still off with Evander, and so he said, "Don't make a move until I get back." And so Turnus is now outside, laying siege to the fort and thinking about how he
skulking, you might say, doing some skulking around the walls.
Yeah, lots of skulking.
Right.
Yeah. And how might he kind of get the Trojans to kind of come out of the building, right? And but then he sees that the ships along the shore, they're completely vulnerable, and he decides that let's trap them here for good.
Yeah.
So let's grab some torches, men, go down to the beach and burn the ships.
Right.
Yeah.
Right. So skulking around, he's like a big, strong guy who's just kind of skulking.
Yeah.
Would you say he's like a Skulk Hogan?
Nicely done. Yes.
Is that a dad joke?
No, that's total dad joke. I hope Carrie appreciated that.
I don't
one.
know.
Right.
So they go down by the seashore with torches, right? And some lighters, and they're going to torch the ships.
Torch the ships.
But see, how does that help? Because doesn't it trap them there?
It traps the Trojans
In
there.
Italy, though.
Right. Well, then there's no way to escape. So he's planning on killing them all.
He doesn't want to just drive them away. He wants to punish them.
He wants to punish them. He wants them gone. He doesn't want them to leave in these ships and then maybe come back later.
I see.
Right.
Okay.
And then we get this really rare kind of break in as Vergil kind of steps into the narrative. And in Lombardo's translation, he says, "What god, O Muses, turned these flames away from the Trojans? Who drove this conflagration from their ships? Tell the old tale as it has ever been told."
So this is another invocation of the Muse, which occurs here in Book 9.
Yeah.
The Muse hasn't been invoked for some time now, right?
Has the Muse been invoked since line 1?
Well, I hate to commit to something categorical without having checked carefully in advance and prove to be wrong.
Right.
But I'm going to say she has not been invoked since Book 1 because I can't remember.
Right. It's whatever it is. It's very, very rare.
Yes, it is rare.
And it jolted me as I was reading this. Is kind of just takes you out of the narrative.
Yes.
And giving Vergil the benefit of the doubt, he's up to something here.
Yes.
And so he seems to set this up, but this is like an old piece of Roman folklore.
Yes.
And he assumes his audience knows it, and it's a set piece, it's a favorite, and now he's going to tell that story.
It's a flashing red light to the audience.
Yeah.
It's a little bit different than apostrophe, which is the figure of speech wherein the poet speaks to the audience. But it's not unlike what Homer does in Book 2 of the Iliad, where prior to the catalog of ships, there's a second invocation.
Okay.
And that's often taken as some kind of a reverent nod toward the muse and her powers of memory, because he's got to list now all of these details about, catalog poetry.
Right.
Not something similar at work here. It seems like it's less a feat of memory than it is something that has a particular grandeur or significance.
Yeah.
And that's why he pauses.
Yeah, exactly. So, and again, in those 4 lines, he tells us in some ways what happens. He says they head for the ships with the torches, but they do not burn them. So what happened to turn the torches away?
Right.
And so then we learn in this story that we learned way back when Aeneas back in Troy was building these ships. The goddess Cybele, there's called Berecynthian, mother of the gods, interceded with Jupiter on behalf of the Trojans. And so she's presented to Berecynthia in the area of Troy. She's a local goddess.
So who is Cybele exactly?
She's the Mater Magna, the Great Mother.
Okay.
Right, and so in the Roman tradition, she's even in this episode, she's presented as the mother of Jupiter himself, and so she's sits even behind the Olympian deities.
Okay.
And so she's one of these goddesses of ecstasy and wildness. There was a temple of Cybele on the Palatine Hill.
Yes.
There was a very fervent and often bloody and violent cult of Cybele in Rome itself.
Highly controversial as well.
Oh, right. Yeah. It could involve self-mutilation.
Right.
But it has kind of those elements of an initiatory mystery cult. But central to kind of Roman identity, and certainly around the time Vergil's writing. So here it's kind of a hat tip to the culture around him, contemporary Rome.
Okay. So within the city of Rome, there's the cult of the Phrygian mother, Cybele, and there are bloody rituals that may have involved self-mutilation.
Yes.
Was there a temple also?
Yes, up on the Palatine Hill. So it had a kind of a central place in Rome, and I think it was a core part of its kind of mythic identity. Yeah.
So would you say Vergil's including it here in the story as an appeal to his contemporaries, or is it an etiology, an explanation of where did this come from? Why is it important?
I think it's certainly there. I mean, the language that he uses suggests that he kind of assumes his audience will know it.
Right.
But I think he also in some ways, he's telling a Homeric tale, but he also wants to make it distinctly Roman at the same time, and this is a great way to do it. Yeah.
Excellent.
So let me read. You want to read a little bit of Lombardo's translation?
I would like to, if
Please
I may.
do
Yeah.
so. Tell this story.
So here's the result then. And so the fates parsed out their time. And on the promised day, Turnus's outrage signaled the mother to repel the fire from her sacred ships. So the mother here is the Sibylline mother,
yes.
Right?
Yep.
Who had given the promise to Jupiter that these ships made in Troy would never be destroyed by flame.
Exactly.
Okay.
Yep.
First, an eerie flash of light blinded the eye, and then coming out of the east, an immense cloud, circled by Ida's mystic dancers, rushed across the sky, and the voice that fell from the ocean of air sent shockwaves through the ranks of Trojans and Rutulians alike. Do not trouble, Teucrians, to take up arms in defense of my ships. Turnus will sooner burn up the sea than scorch my sacred pines. Go free now, go, goddesses of the deep, the mother commands it. The ships at once ripped their cables free of the banks, and dipping their beaks, dove like dolphins into the depths, and then each, a great wonder, rose as a mermaid and swam in the waves.
This wondrous metamorphosis of ships into sea creatures.
That's kind of crazy.
It is kind of crazy.
Have you seen Avatar 2?
I have not.
Have you seen Avatar 1?
I did.
Okay.
Grudgingly.
Okay.
So, a visual feast, but I thought a dead bore as a story.
The first one?
Yeah.
Yeah. Interesting. That's what they're saying about the second one too.
Really?
But but it's kind of like that, right? It's got this magical, descriptive, otherworldly sort of feel to it, and the ships dive down and become mermaids.
Yeah.
They're living underwater.
Yeah, it's really quite a beautiful visual to kind of imagine all that going on.
Could Kevin Costner be in this one too?
Boy, he would drag this one down.
Really?
Yeah, exactly.
I'm thinking of Waterworld.
Oh, yeah, exactly. I did see. Have you seen that movie?
Yes, I have.
Oh man,
I remember nothing about it.
It's a stinker, stinkeroo. Right. Now, Ovid, I don't believe Ovid tells. I mean, this tale. This seems like it'd be ready made for the Metamorphoses, right?
You'd think so.
But I don't think that shows up in his poetry.
Don't remember.
Again, I don't want to commit to that. But
right.
This strikes me as kind
the
of
the fans will be howling. Right.
Yep. So, the Rutulians seeing this, they're awed.
Yes.
They're kind of stunned by this. But Turnus, he decides to look on the bright side. He says, "Okay, we didn't burn the ships, but hey, they're gone. Right? They turned into sea creatures. They can't ride those back to Troy or get out of here.
Right. So he's satisfied with the outcome.
Exactly. He says now they have no way to escape, and wasn't that the point to begin with?
A flexible hero.
Right. So he tries to turn the tide of opinion, and he says to his men, he says these portents were just for the Trojans. And have nothing to do with us. This is not meant to kind of scare us away and saying like, if we pursue this, that the gods are going to punish us. No, that was a little thing for the Trojans, but we still have our job to do.
That's right. So then night falls, right, on the Rutulians, and they're camping outside the walls.
Right. And speaking of camping,
yes,
it's time for the ads.
This episode of Ad Nauseam is brought to you by the good folks at Ratio Coffee with offices in Portland, Oregon. Mark Helwig has been producing 2 fine coffee machines for the general public. These would be the Ratio 6 and the Ratio 8.
Yes.
Jeff, tell us a little bit about your morning coffee ritual.
I like to get it all ready to go the night before.
Yes.
I've got my metal cone.
Right.
In my hand-blown carafe.
Yes.
It's waiting to go. I don't add the coffee. I don't want it sitting there stale all night.
No.
But I add the fresh grounds in the morning. I hit that button, and you just sit back and in 3 minutes, it's ready.
It goes through the 3 stages of the bloom, the off-gassing of all the terrible flavors. That's where the brackish tang dissipates.
Exactly.
Friends don't let friends drink brackish tang.
No, they do not.
And then in the brew stage, that's where the magic happens. And then ready, and you're good to go.
And you're ready to go. Yep. So I take out the cone. I put in the little secure top piece.
That's right.
And it's ready to pour. The whole thing is just a beautiful aesthetic experience.
It's delightful.
It is.
And the machine is gorgeous.
It is.
You have the 8 now. You used to have the 6, which is also a fine machine. You had that one in the stainless steel.
I had the stainless steel.
Yep. And for the 8, what's your color option?
I also have the stainless steel.
You do?
But with the glass carafe.
The glass carafe, right.
Yep.
So mine is kind of an oyster color, as the audience knows, with real walnut accents. It's a work of art.
So if you take your coffee seriously, you love that morning ritual as much as Dave and I do yourself a favor, go to ratiocoffee.com, click on the 6 or the 8 or both if you feel so moved, and get yourself one of these wonderful machines. You can type in the coupon code ANCOK5.
ANCOK5. Don't know what the K stands for.
No, but you type that in, and what does that get them, Dave?
You're going to get 15% off. It comes in a lovely package. It's not a cheap coffee machine, but why would you buy a cheap coffee machine?
Exactly.
You want something that's going to last. This will become an heirloom. You can leave it to your grandkids.
It's true. Yep. You will not regret it. This episode of Ad Nauseam also brought to you by Hackett Publishing for, I think it's 51 years
51.
Now. Yep. They had this publisher with their offices in Indianapolis, Indiana, and Cambridge, Massachusetts. They have been publishing erudite, wonderful, accessible, digestible translations of the classics and many other aspects of academia for a very long time. I love their works. I use them in my classes. I have them on my shelves at home. I can't say enough about these guys.
Yeah, one of my close friends is taking a class in political science, and they're reading Plato. And so I said, here, use my copy of The Republic, published by Hackett, translated by C.D.C. Reeve. Has an attractive cover. It's inexpensive, highly accurate. You can't go wrong.
Yeah, and if you like Mr. Lombardo's translations, and you've been listening to the Aeneid episodes, you can pick that up at Hackett as well. His translations of the Iliad and the Odyssey, too.
And the Aeneid, as you said, and Ovid's Metamorphoses.
Yep.
Why don't you even pick up the translation that Lombardo has done of the Aeneid and read it in advance of our episodes? And then you can sit back and say, these guys got this totally wrong.
Exactly. You can chortle and laugh and mock.
That's correct.
That's
I
right.
should be doing my own podcast.
Yes.
Those 2 knuckleheads. What do they know about the Aeneid?
Exactly. So yeah, you can do a little bit of advanced homework.
That's right.
And I think more charitably, you'd appreciate these episodes that much more. Right?
More charitable to whom?
To
us?
To us, exactly. Right.
But they want to get the discount, Jeff. Tell them about the discount.
So go to hackettpublishing.com. That's HACKETT publishing.com. Find the books you want. Scroll through their catalog. It's great stuff. Type in the coupon code AN2023. That's ad nauseam AN with the current year. And that will get you
20% off and free shipping.
Check it out.
All right, Jeff, as we get back into it now, we're ready for the night sortie.
Yes, so this is what the scene that we talked about at the beginning of the episode. Nisus and Euryalus decide they're going to make this, it's not to invade the camp to kill the Trojans, they're going to go and get Aeneas.
Right.
So I think that's also something that that separates it somewhat from the Dolon in the Iliad.
Right, now Aeneas is not in the camp of the Rutulians.
No.
They have to go through the camp of the Rutulians, who are surrounding the fort, and go on to find Aeneas.
Right. And so so they don't go necessarily with the intent to kill and destroy. It's really to sneak through, but the killing and the destroying happens anyway. Right. So this is Vergil's Dolon, as that book 10 of the Aeneid, or the Iliad is often called.
Called that because it's named after the character Dolon.
Yes.
So it's his moment of glory.
Right.
His 15 minutes of epic fame.
Exactly, which is not all that glorious because he gets butchered and dismembered.
No, it's bad.
Right. But it's this episode that in the Iliad, and I think also here, at least to some degree, raises questions of is this proper? Is this heroic behavior? Is this something that the gods would bless?
Right.
And so in the Iliad, Athena, she's pushing Diomedes and Odysseus to do this. And as we saw in our opening quote from the article,
Lennox,
the gods really aren't involved here. And Euryalus actually muses as, what drives us to do these kinds of things? And does kind of that dangerous...
It's Nisus who's musing as he speaks to Euryalus.
There you go, exactly. So Nisus says, is it do the gods put this in us, or is it just that those dark desires become a god to us?
Yes, that's a really interesting question, isn't it?
It is, right? So and so how does that justify or condemn the actions that follow?
Right. And another question that you could raise here is, what are Vergil's rules of war?
Right.
What goes in a Vergilian understanding of warfare? Is the killing of innocents, the killing of women and children, only combatants or maybe non-combatant males, can they be killed as well?
Right.
Must one be honest in war, or is it okay to lie to an enemy? Mm-hmm. All of these things are in play. And are they different from Homeric notions of arete or excellence?
Exactly. And one of the interesting wrinkles here is that we've really up until this book, we've had the Trojans, well, at least up until book 7 or 8, the Trojans, they are victims, right? They've been kind of chased out of their home. They're wandering, they're looking for a new home. And in finding the new home, now the shoe's on the other foot. Now they're the invaders.
Right.
Right. So how do we feel about them now as doing what the Greeks did to them?
Right.
And it changes everything.
So Nisus and Euryalus reappear here after quite a long hiatus.
Yes, we saw them in book 5.
Okay, and that was the funeral games.
Right, and so they participate in this foot race, and they are presented as this inseparable pair.
That's correct. Mm-hmm. And there is this incredible foreshadowing, maybe, where as the race goes along, one of them slips in the mire and the mess of an offering, and he's about to lose, but then his friend trips the other competitors, and then he trips the other competitors so his friend can sail through to the victory.
Right, exactly. Right. So are you seeing some foreshadowing in that scene of this? Okay.
Oh, yeah,
all right,
because as we said at the time, if you fall down in the remnants of an animal sacrifice with the dung and the carcass and the discarded material, that's not good.
It is not good.
That doesn't
no matter how you look at it,
well.
it's not good, right?
No.
Right. So now we see the penny drop here.
Right. Just the dry cleaning bill would be enormous.
Exactly. So Nisus and Euryalus, they have this discussion, and Nisus kind of musing about, where does this desire come from?
Right.
But they decide to sneak out together to get word to Aeneas about what's been happening. And so before going, they go to Euryalus, Aeneas' son, and to the council to let them know what they're thinking and to get their blessing. And speaking of kind of dire foreshadowing,
right?
Vergil really draws this out as the council gives their blessing. As they say, go for it. But there's these hugs and embraces and tears and long goodbyes and words about what should I do if we never see you again.
Right.
It's clear that this is not going to go well.
Right. Mm-hmm. Right.
So let's get into the episode itself. So they're at line 314. Can you read a little bit of Latin for us, Dave?
Yes, I'd love to. So, egresi superant facas nactisque per umbram, castra nemi capetunt multis taminante futuri, exidio passim samno vinoque per herbam, corpora fusa vident ardrectos litera currus, inter lora rotasque viros simul arma jacere, vinasemur prior hertacides sic ora locutus.
Nice.
Thank you. And this means, what does Lombardo say? How does he translate it?
He says, the pair leave and soon find them in the enemy camp. They leave, cross the trenches, and make their way through night's shadows to the enemy camp, where soon they will be the death of many. Everywhere they look, they see drunken men asleep in the grass, chariots tilted upright, soldiers sprawled among wheels and reins, weapons and wine jars lying about. The son of Hyrtacus was first to speak. This is it, Euryalus. Cover our rear and keep your eyes open. I'll lead, and I'll make a road of blood you can't miss. Right, so now the question that I ask as I read this is, Nisus is saying, I'm going to go kill me some Rutulians.
Yeah,
right?
he's the son of Hyrtacus.
Right. So my question is that necessary? If they're all asleep and drunk, couldn't you do a little bit of tiptoeing and find your way to Aeneas?
Maybe you've been watching too many cartoons.
With the tiptoeing?
With the tiptoeing?
Maybe.
The question that first occurred to me, I mean, your question's a good one, we'll get to it too, but why are they all drunk? Why are the Rutulians all drunk?
That is a good question.
It's an undisciplined camp?
Right. This is my answer to that. I think what Vergil wants us to think of are the traditions about the Trojan horse. That when the Trojans bring in the Trojan horse, they think the war's over and it's party time, and they're drunken and asleep when Odysseus and his men pop out of the horse.
I see. So similarly, but kind of in reverse.
Yes.
Turnus and the Rutulians think, we've trapped them, the war's at an end.
Yeah.
And so they have this feeling of invulnerability.
Exactly. Or
They've let their guard down.
Yes. Or they see no reason to kind of to rush this ordeal, and so they're drinking it up, and
right.
They even have the chariots are tilted upright. They're kind of up on blocks.
Right. So we were talking on the way over here. I'm reading this biography of U.S. Grant. By Ron Chernow.
Right.
It's a really magisterial work. I've gotten to just the point. I think it's 1876, right near, maybe it's 75. The end of Grant's second term, and a Michigander, Major General George Armstrong Custer.
That's right, Michigan's own. I'd forgotten
about that. That's correct.
Yeah.
He leads a column off to the west to put down the Sioux Rebellion, as it was called, but arrogant, right? Arrogant, and goes to his own doom from an excess of valor, is how it was described at the time. People today would describe it differently because, and Chernow says, this was a genocidal impulse, basically. But Custer was known during the Civil War as a man of great heroism and courage when fighting Confederates. But he was supposed to wait for the other two generals to join with him so that they had a larger force against the Sioux, who were now in eastern Montana at Little Bighorn, previously in the Dakotas. But Custer just forges right ahead with a kind of total disregard for what was going to happen. So all 260 of his men were killed by...
And Custer himself, too, right there on the hillside.
That's correct.
Right? Yeah.
And his body was stripped naked and disfigured. It was Homeric, honestly.
Right.
The justice and the devastation, because Sitting Bull and Crazy Horse there, outsmarted him and outnumbered him something like 10-1.
Yeah.
So I'm reminded of that as reading the story of Nisus and Euryalus. Is it gallantry? Is it bravery on their part? Is it foolishness, bloodlust? What's going on?
Yeah, I think a Greek would look at this and it's a textbook case of hubris meets nemesis, right?
Exactly.
Right.
Can you define those terms?
So hubris, an overstepping of bounds. I think you could define hubris in many, many different ways. Right. I always like to use the example of Icarus. Right?
Yes.
So his dad tells him, don't fly too high, but also don't fly too low.
Right. Show some moderation.
So exactly. So not showing moderation is hubris.
Right.
And when you show hubris, that invites nemesis and the catastrophe.
And Nemesis is a goddess whose primary job is to punish hubris.
Exactly.
So I asked for the definition of terms because I know it's remotely possible some members of the audience have not listened to all 115 episodes.
I doubt that, but
it's possible.
Right.
We've talked about hubris and nemesis a lot.
Yes.
Probably enough to make nemesis angry.
Right.
But those are the terms. That's what they mean.
Exactly. So I take this in the scene that this slaughter is unnecessary.
Okay, because they're drunk.
Because
because they can get through the camp and to their goal without killing anyone.
Exactly. They didn't set out to do this, but Nisus he's overcome by this Dira Cupido maybe in this moment, and he's gonna get some. He's gonna take some people out.
Yeah.
Right?
Now, when King David is on the run after he has been anointed, but before he has risen to the throne and Saul is hunting him.
Yeah.
Remember, a deep sleep falls on Saul's camp, and one of David's men goes right up and has the opportunity to kill Saul, and David tells him not to, right? And even is upset that some of Saul's cloak has been brought back because, the Lord's anointed has been threatened or harmed.
Yeah.
So some of the external features of the two stories are really similar.
Yeah, I like that.
Deep sleep on the camp. Of course, the moral point and the outcome are quite different.
Right. Now, I know in some of our comparisons, along these lines, and you and I have different different views on things. Like we've talked like the Cyclops episode. I've demonstrated some moderate sympathy for the Cyclops, and you always seem to kind of come down to the fact that what we perceive in these stories as kind of immoderately violent is, from an ancient point of view, acceptable if not necessary. So
in two cases.
Okay.
In the case of someone who is subhuman, and Polyphemus, the Cyclops, is presented as that.
Yep.
Or maybe the Harpies or Medusa, right? These are subhuman. They're not human beings.
Yes.
They're other. And then in the case also where there's justice to be meted out.
Okay.
So when Odysseus kills the suitors, I don't necessarily like the gore, but I don't think it would have bothered an ancient audience because it's retributive justice.
Yeah.
They had a different concept. Now, the Rutulians, I don't know if they fall into either of those categories.
Right. No, I think so too. Okay, so I think we're on the same page here too.
Because they're human. They're not like the Cyclops.
Right.
And they haven't done anything particularly wrong to Nisus and Euryalus.
Exactly. That's another thing that bothers me too, is that this is an episode that takes place really before the wars even started.
Correct.
Right? So there's not like a history where there'd be a boiling up of hatreds, right? And so that's what it kind of comes out of nowhere.
The contrast then at the very end of the epic, when Aeneas dispatches Turnus, Aeneas is instituting a retributive justice on Turnus for the death of Pallas.
There we go. Right.
Nothing similar happening here in the story of Nisus and Euryalus.
Exactly. So I think those are really good distinctions to tease out. I often find when I teach, not this episode, but when I teach things like the Iliad or the Odyssey, I often find that my students come with it with kind of the assumption that this is ancient, this is violent, and so we just have to kind of accept all of this is just because that's the way the world was.
Yeah.
So I could see some of my students reading this episode and say, well, that's just the way it was. But no, it's not.
No, it's not, because people, in my estimation, are the same the world over and throughout time. And the other issue is, I don't think that most of the time our moral imagination is broad enough. Spend a little time reading the news, and you'll find there is so much cruelty and violence that still takes place.
Yeah.
And for a person not to be outraged by that is a failure of morality.
Yeah.
Right?
Yeah.
So I don't think it's good to say, well, that's just how the world was then.
Right.
Vergil has a conscience, and it may even be, it seems to me much more developed than that of most people I know.
Yeah, especially when you come to see that Nisus and Euryalus don't return to the camp, or they don't make it to Arcadia, right? They pay for this.
They do.
In a way that Diomedes and Odysseus in the Iliad do not.
Correct.
So that's why I think that's.
So you say that's the distinction.
That's, I think, a very important distinction. And that's what I mean by maybe in Vergil adding this coda to the story. We see him maybe completing the Iliadic story, kind of saying, well, this is, if Homer had done it correctly, or maybe he's even answering the fact that, well, it's not Homeric, but this is how it should be done, right?
The difference, though, is Nisus and Euryalus are absolutely minor characters. Odysseus and Diomedes are not.
You can't kill off the main character.
They're really central to much of the action, even later in the story.
Right.
And I'm not saying that Homer couldn't have done something different, but it's telling that Vergil introduces two characters that I believe were previously unknown.
Oh yeah, right. No, that's a very good point, right? So if you off even one of those two, Odysseus and Diomedes, well, then you're left holding a very empty bag.
That's correct. Yeah. A lot of ramifications.
Right. So they make a slaughter of the sleeping drunken men. They steal a bunch of things. Euryalus notably steals one of the captain's helmets off and puts it on his head. And then they sprint for the woods.
Right. So killing men in their sleep when they're drunk.
Yes.
Have you seen this meme? I can't remember all of it maybe, but this is what we'll do. We'll cross a frozen river on Christmas Day and kill you in your sleep. We're Americans. We've done it before. We'll do it again.
I haven't seen this.
It's a picture of Washington crossing the Delaware.
Right.
It was a surprise attack, right? On
yeah.
the Hessian camp, I think, on Christmas morning.
Oh,
right?
That was on Christmas.
Yeah.
Okay, wow. Yeah.
Everyone was shocked, right?
Yeah.
It's maybe a little bit reminiscent of Nisus and Euryalus.
There you go.
Although, George Washington didn't end in disaster. It was a victory. One of the first real victories for the American Revolution.
Right. So they kill these men. They strip some prizes.
Yes, they get a Rolex, if I'm not mistaken.
Exactly.
What's it, like an iPhone 15?
iPhone 15, Xbox.
That's right.
Right, and so they're running off with it, under their arms, running into the woods.
Yes, and that's what gives them away.
Yes,
this is such poetic justice.
Right. So they not only are they they're committing hubris by killing and despoiling.
Mm-hmm.
It also clearly takes them way too long, because by the time they start running for it, the sun's coming up.
Yes.
Right.
This is one of the most gripping moments in the poem, I would say, in the whole epic. They steal a bunch of stuff, and Euryalus, what does he steal in particular?
This helmet, right?
Captain's helmet. Bronze. The captain probably polished it off, right, the night before, and buffed it with wax before he polished off a bottle of Jim Beam or something like that.
Ouzo, right?
And passed out. And as Euryalus is running across the field, what happens?
The sun glints off the polished bronze and gives them away.
Yep.
And then the chase begins.
Yep. Like that. It's so the irony of it is, that biblical expression, "Be sure your sin will find you out." Right. He grabs that helmet and the greatest prize. But if he had had more self-control and restraint, and just gone on to his purported mission of finding Aeneas, the sun wouldn't have glinted off the helmet, given away his location.
Yeah,
and he's a dead man.
He's a dead man. It's all over. And then not only that, as they're running to the forest, they're kind of tripping up in the thick undergrowth, so that's slowing them down. Just
like Book 5, right, in the foot race.
Exactly.
The foreshadowing.
There we go. And then Euryalus is grabbed. Let me read a little bit of Lombardo here. It says, Nisus got through in a blind rush and would have escaped the enemy in those regions later called Alban, at that time part of Latinus' pasture. When Nisus stopped and looked back, to no avail for his missing friend. Poor Euryalus, where did I leave you? How can I find you? And I thought this, we were talking, I think, briefly at the beginning of, not comparisons of Vergil, or you wondered if Ovid was outdoing Vergil by adding 3 more books in his poetry. Right. But I wonder if Ovid is deliberately tagging Vergil here in his episode at the end of the Daedalus and Icarus, where so now Nisus is looking around. Where are you? Where can I find you? It's almost the same thing where Daedalus, after Icarus plunges to the sea, turns around and says, Icarus. He said, where are you? Where should I look for you?
Right.
I wonder if Ovid was kind of nodding, kind of winking at his.
Oh, interesting.
I don't know. I mean, it just struck me as kind of when I read that passage of what Nisus says, it says, that reminds me exactly of the end of the Daedalus episode. But who knows? Interesting.
So Nisus runs after Euryalus as Euryalus is being dragged away to his death by the other Rutulians.
Yes.
It's the close bond of friendship, right, that holds these two men together, or perhaps on some readings more than friendship.
Yes.
But the text isn't clear, I would say, on that at all.
No. Yep.
And then, shall I read some Lombardo here?
Yeah, let's do it.
Nisus spoke and put all of his weight into the throw. So he's going to throw a spear here to try to save his friend. The spear split the dark air, hit a warrior named Sulmo in the back, and snapped. The splintered shaft punched through to his chest, and Sulmo spun around, hemorrhaging warm blood in heaving gasps until he collapsed into cold death. The Rutulians looked around in every direction, breathing more sharply. Nisus balanced another spear over his shoulder.
So he's carrying all this loot, and he's got 2 spears?
The spears have straps.
Okay, all right.
It works. Okay. It's like a water bottle with a strap.
I got you. All right, yeah, go on.
And while they hesitated, it went hissing through both of Tagus's temples and warmed itself deep in his cloven brain. I find this much more disturbing than a visual CGI representation.
Without a doubt, though, that line in particular got me.
Touches my imagination.
Warmed itself deep in his cloven brain. Hats off, Mr. Lombardo.
That's nice.
It makes up for that first line.
Yeah, this is called the figure of speech here. May I be a little pedantic?
Please.
Okay, this is the figure of speech called prolepsis.
Okay.
Anticipation. Right. The brain isn't cloven until the spear goes through it.
Ah, yes.
Then it's cleaved in half.
That's right.
But by a kind of anticipation, you describe it as, what's going to happen to it. Warmed itself deep in his cloven brain. Oof. Vulcanes seethed with rage. He's the leader of the Rutulians who's there. But he could not see who threw the spear or where to unleash his fury.
All right, so it's falling apart for these two guys really quickly.
Really fast.
Yep.
If only they had just walked through the camp.
Just walk through.
Or maybe stolen just one watch.
Left the iPhone.
Take a pair of Air Jordans,
Exactly.
just one pair.
Some socks.
That'd be okay.
Yeah.
Maybe some leftover vodka, but no, they have to engage in all of this wanton destruction.
Yep.
And it undoes them.
It does. So Nisus, he desperately tries to save Euryalus, and he claims, this whole thing was my idea, so, turn your fury on me. He tried, way too late to try to kind of sacrifice himself for his friend, but Euryalus is slaughtered anyway by Vulcans. And we get this wonderful, very tragic simile.
This lovely epic simile. You're going to read that?
Yeah, so in translation, as a purple flower cut by a plow droops in death, or as a poppy bows its weary head heavy with spring rain, so thus the head of Euryalus. And this is also a direct tag, it seems, of Homer as well, where we get the death of one Gorgythion, who was a minor son of Priam, and he's killed by one of Teucer's arrows in Book 8 of the Iliad. And here in Theodore Buckley's translation of the Iliad.
Can I just ask, aren't all the sons of Priam minors?
Nicely done.
That's a dad joke.
Yeah,
sorry.
right.
All right, sorry. Theodore Buckley's translation of the death of Gorgythion?
Yes, and as a poppy which in the garden is weighed down with fruit and vernal showers droops its head to one side, so did his head incline aside, depressed by the helmet. So it kind of, as these similes often do, they take kind of a gentle image from nature, but apply it to something very dark, bloody, and violent.
Yes.
Yeah, it's a great juxtaposition.
It's wonderful poetry. So Gorgythian, the son of Priam, is also young, beautiful, and innocent, which we can't really say of Euryalus. He has the residual innocence of youth, I guess, but now he's graduated to bloody war,
right? So
there's a sense of just deserts here.
Exactly. Maybe swayed by the elder Nisus, but nevertheless guilty for what he's done, or at least at very least guilt by association.
And what happens next?
So Nisus, he goes out in a blaze of glory. He rages against Vulcans. He kills Vulcans, but in the killing, he is mortally wounded himself. And his last act of his life is to throw himself on top of the body of Euryalus.
In an act of affection or an act of protection.
Protection, kind of in vain, of course.
Friendship. You know the very famous two skeletons that were discovered in Pompeii recently?
No.
Well, it was within the last decade, I guess. Two skeletons, and they're holding hands.
Oh, I didn't see that.
Yeah. Yep. It's two male skeletons, and so there's speculation, but I'm not interested in that.
Yeah.
Clearly, they were friends, right? And I got to tell you, no matter who I'm dying with, if it's a volcanic, hippocast, I want to hold somebody's hand. I don't care who
it is. Exactly.
Even if it's someone who's been, my mortal enemy since childhood.
You got plenty of those.
I suppose. I'm going to say, hey, it's almost all over. Can you just squeeze my hand real quick?
Yeah.
So let's have an act of gentle friendship here.
Right. So yes, this an act of affection or protection, connection in Nisus's last act.
So they're dead now, right?
They're dead.
So what's next?
So it just makes me think about what is the message? What is Vergil trying to say here?
Yeah.
And so is it an answer to the Doloneas that by using these minor figures, he can tell a similar kind of story, but he can have them pay for their hubris in a way that, as you rightly noted, Odysseus and Diomedes in terms of the narrative simply could not be. So is he correcting that to some degree? Does this bring us back to that our opening quote and the musings about who puts this stuff in our heart? Can we blame the gods, or is it just our own dark desires that make us do that?
Become a god to us, and we're driven to it despite ourselves.
Exactly. And so I think because Vergil kind of begins the episode with that musing, I think he wants us to think about that.
Right.
What led to this? Who's to blame for this? And so we don't have a god involved. There's no Athena there. Venus doesn't step in. Juno, we don't see Juno kind of sending down furies and the like to kind of rage amongst the Rutulians. The gods are really noticeably absent from this episode,
right?
Which makes it really interesting.
Absolutely.
Yeah.
Can I trivialize it just a minute?
Please do.
Okay. So maybe something people can relate to. If someone puts out a plate of cookies, right, or a bag of potato chips, and they're not even a cookie that you really like, and you know you don't like it because you've had it before.
Yeah.
And you have eater's remorse, right?
Yeah.
But for that split second, your will is divided. I want one of those cookies, right?
Yes.
So you go and eat it, and you know, there's two wills struggling with each other. And as soon as you've eaten it, you say,
you immediately regret it.
that was terrible.
Why did I do that?
Exactly.
Right.
And I knew I wasn't going to like it. What is it? Hope springs eternal. This time, you know, this whatever it is, crustio, will taste good.
Yeah.
Nah. So it's not like that. So I'm just trying to find some analog.
No, yeah, I like that.
We're not going to be trapped on the battlefield, probably walking through the Rutulian camp, but that sense of what makes us do certain things.
Exactly.
That a large part of us knows is not in our interest or something that we like.
Right. Hey, where does Nisus's bloodlust come? Where does it come from in that
Right.
moment?
We've
right?
only seen him as an athlete and a friend. Right. And now he just turns into some raging monster.
I don't know. With your example, I've had that. That usually happens with me with fig Newtons.
Fig Newtons? You don't like the Fig Newtons?
I hate them, but
you don't like the gritty, grainy interior?
But if there's one sitting there and I'm caught in one of these weak moments, I'm going to eat it.
Yeah.
And I'm going to hate myself for it.
Right.
Yeah.
It sometimes happens with chips too, right? I mean, this is the podcast for classical gourmands,
That's true.
Right? You know, you eat 4 chips, that's pretty good. But 54 chips, you think, now why did I do that?
Exactly right.
I knew I didn't want to do that. Now I feel terrible.
Exactly.
So,
I mean, they don't sell Pringles individually. They sell them in that giant stack.
That's
right?
correct.
It's like you open that can, you're just it's Pandora's box
it's like
all over.
a corn silo of Pringles, right?
Exactly.
You have to climb to the top and take the lid off.
Yeah.
So
exactly. All right, Dave. Have we said what we needed to say about this?
And probably a lot that we didn't need to say.
Probably a lot of that stuff.
Yeah.
So I think
should we wrap it up?
I think we're up against it. We got to get out of here.
Jeff, why exactly do we have to get out of here?
Well, did you hear that pounding on the door in the background?
What is that?
There's some executives from Nabisco.
Nabisco, the National Biscuit Company.
That's what that is?
That's what Nabisco stands for.
I never
what
knew
did you
that.
think it was?
Well, I don't think about these things.
A Comanche word or something like that?
Something like that.
No, it's Nabisco, the National Biscuit Company. They've got this new product called Uncrustables. I'm not making this up.
What is this?
It's a peanut butter and jelly sandwich in a little pocket.
Oh, no.
And all the crust has been taken off, and it's sold in an individual bag. You haven't seen the Uncrustables?
That sounds so nasty.
Yeah, it's like that mafia movie, right?
What the Untouchables?
The Uncrustables.
Uncrustables. Oh,
I recently encountered this product, and it reminded me of Huggable Portions.
There we go. Right.
Yeah, Uncrustables.
But I take it they're not happy about our comments about the Fig Newton.
You know, they want to get in here and they want to straighten us out on the Fig Newtons.
Yeah, exactly. But before we
Maybe
go,
give us some free samples.
I hope so. Before we go, can you say something about the Moss method?
Yes, I'll try to be brief. The Moss method is a way for you to go from
neophyte to erudite.
Yes. If you don't know any Greek or you only know a little bit, but you want to know a lot more, sign up for my class. It's got 40 different lessons, very carefully explained, deep, precise, concise videos, which will teach you Attic and Koine Greek, that of the classical world and of the New Testament. It's a great value. It's possible there are better Greek programs out there. I haven't surveyed them all, but I am very confident this is the best one for the price. It is an excellent value.
And if they go to mossmethod.com, they can see everything they need to know.
Absolutely. Okay. That's right. And they get office hours with me every Friday where we discuss the Greek language.
Sounds great. Now, what about LLPSI?
Yes. So for the Lingua Latina Per Se Illustrata, Hans Orberg's wonderful program, I have a Latin course which takes you from the ground up. So if you know no Latin or you're a Latin teacher and you want to learn how to teach others, reading, writing, speaking Latin, this course is for you. So go to latinperdiem.com/LLPSI. I also have more than 1,900 free Latin videos available at latinperdiem.com.
1,900?
1,900.
Wow.
I'm almost reaching the 2K mark.
Fantastic.
I've been doing this for going on 8 years now.
Man.
So there's a massive library of material. Almost any author you can think of, you can find at least one lesson there.
Excellent. Well, we got some people to thank, as always. First and foremost, Mishka, our wonderful engineer who puts this all together in record time. Who are these guys that are making this music?
Thanks, Mishka. The guys making the music are Scott Van Zen, a cross between Stevie Ray Vaughan and Jimi Hendrix. This guy, and Van Halen. He can play the guitar like you would not believe. Mm-hmm. And Mr. Ken Tamplin, who has the Vocal Academy. So they generously gave us the music for the intro, the outro, and the bumper music. Check out their stuff online. Yeah, don't hesitate to get in touch with us if you want to have an awesome shout out like Carrie did at the top of this one.
Write to Dave at david@adnauseam.com. Don't forget the V.
Or Jeff at adnauseam.com. Don't forget the V in the word ad nauseum. What if they want to get a t-shirt?
Well, go to adnauseam.com. Check us out. You can scroll through past episodes, check out the store, pick yourself up a t-shirt.
Leave a review at Apple iTunes or Spotify.
Yep, everything helps get us more visibility. So, Dave, what are we doing next week?
Well, we're kind of going to keep that under wraps for now.
Okay.
We may come back to the second half. We may come to the second half of Aeneid Book 9 or go in a slightly different direction.
Okay. Yep. So stay tuned. We'll see what happens. And, Dave, you have our gustatory parting shot, I believe.
Yes. This comes from the author of a famous book on style, Strunk and White, right? E.B. White. People may know him also from Charlotte's Web and...
What else is it?
Stuart Little.
Oh, I didn't even know.
Trumpet of the Swan.
Yeah.
Yep. And this is what he says. It was a delicious meal. Skim milk, wheat middlings, leftover pancakes, half a donut, the rind of a summer squash, 2 pieces of stale toast, a third of a ginger snap, a fish tail, 1 orange peel, several noodles from a noodle soup, the scum off a cup of cocoa, an ancient jelly roll, a strip of paper from the lining of the garbage pail, and a spoonful of raspberry jello.
What a feast. Thanks for listening.
Thanks.